Hey guys, here with another edition of Casual Magic. These are videos of decks that I make that are, less intended for play in a tournament or in a really competitive format. They're more kitchen table decks, but they're always, kind of quirky, really fun decks. And the deck I have today is a result of the Card of the Month challenge from the CasualMTG subreddit. In that subreddit, they challenged people to make a deck around Forced Fruition, which is a pretty weird card. I'd never even seen it before. It's 6-mana enchantment, as you can see here. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player draws 7 cards. And the route I chose to take with this was to really punish my opponent for drawing cards. And so we have 10 cards in our deck that punish for drawing cards. We have Fate Unraveler, who's an enchantment creature who does 1 damage to our opponent every time they draw a card. Spiteful Visions, which does 1 damage anytime any player draws a card, including us, and everybody also draws an extra card. And Underworld Dreams, which does 1 damage also anytime an opponent draws a card. So we have 10 effects that hurt our opponent when they draw cards. And we have various ways. Well, the main ways we have to force them to draw cards are Forced Fruition and Damnable Pact. It's pretty easy to get 2 of these effects in play. Once we do Forced Fruition, that's 14 damage if they cast a spell. So that's a pretty painful blow for them. Damnable Pact is a way to just win the game with 1 spell or get pretty close. You can pay even just 6 mana there, and your opponent loses 4 life if you don't have any of these enchantments in play, and then they lose 4 more for each of the rest of these enchantments that are in play. Because the deck is so enchantment heavy, most of the cards I've talked about so far, other than Damnable Pact, are enchantments. I also went with a little bit of a Constellation sub-theme. So we have Grim Guardian, too, to help slowly eat away at our opponent's life, so that, by the time we start really punishing them for drawing cards, they've already lost a little bit of life. And I have 2 Doomwake Giants to lock down the ground and kill creatures at the same time. And if we play multiple enchantments in 1 turn, it can wipe our opponent's board pretty frequently. And the deck's basically a control deck, as you can probably tell. We have a bunch of stuff in the 2-drop area, and they're all removal spells or counter spells. We have 4 mana leaks. We want to slow our opponent down in the early game so we can get sort of set up to just finish them by forcing them to draw cards. And we also have, 2 Doom Blades, 3 Go for the Throats, and 4 Ultimate Prices, all really cheap premium removal. We also have 1 Chasm Skulker in the deck, just sort of as another win condition. We can draw extra cards with Spiteful Visions. We can also make ourselves draw with Damnable Pact if we really need to hit something. So Chasm Skulker can get pretty massive. And when it dies, it puts a bunch of creatures into play, even after it dies. So it's a real nuisance for people to deal with. And that's more or less the deck. It's a pretty cheap deck. It's not as cheap as some of the other casual decks I've made, but as you can see here, I need to go to my cart. I was looking at Damnable Pact. It costs less than 8 tickets, and most of that comes from the land. Underground River and Drowned Catacomb add up to, let's do some math here, about $6 of the $7.62. So if you wanted to go even cheaper, and use cheaper lands, you could. So it's a really cheap deck to make. It's really a lot of fun. I also have a sideboard, but it's kind of just whatever. I have 2 Doom Blades in case I go up against someone black. Someone who has artifacts, for example, I can side in the Doom Blades. 1 Go for the Throat in case I go up someone who's black. Deathmark can kill green or white creatures. I thought for a little while about putting more of a emphasis in this deck on Devotion. So Grey Merchant of Asphodel was in an earlier version of the deck, but I think he's just too slow. We do get a lot of Devotion in this deck, but he's in the sideboard for some matchups where we really want to gain the life. We also have Disdainful Stroke against decks that play big spells. Encase in Ice is a good removal spell against blue and green, and Negate just against people who run very few creatures. So the sideboard isn't, really fine-tuned at this point, but, it's just sort of a casual deck, so it doesn't need a super fine-tuned sideboard. I'll play, as I always do in these casual series, I'll now play 3 matches with the deck and show you it in action instead of just me talking about it. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.